You should have your Articles of Confederation sheet. Looks like this, says required document number 2. We're going to list down some bullet points here, so go ahead and take notes. This is something that you need to memorize. You're going to practice. You're going to do sorts on it along with other foundational documents, and you need to get fast at it. You should just be able to rattle off 5 or 6 problems with the Articles of Confederation like that. Okay, so it's going to require practice. Those of you who are doing the class at home, you're going to need to maybe have someone at home quiz you on it. All right, that's going to be required. Or turn it over and take your whiteboard out. That's why you have a whiteboard. You should have a whiteboard, and go ahead and write it out on the whiteboard. We know that memory is enhanced through writing. So write it. That's going to be huge. When I've had students struggle in my class, the number one thing that I've given as a tool to help fix that is a whiteboard, expo marker, and them practicing writing. And it has happened. And those who commit to it, they do extremely well in the class. And I'm talking like people that had at the beginning D's or even an F, and at the end of the year, they ended up with an A. So this is something that is really important. And if you're not going to be in class with me practicing, you're going to need to be doing this that way at home. Okay, here we go. Articles of Confederation. I'm switching the page here. Let's scroll up here. And 1781, 1789, this was the government of the United States. Okay, so what are the problems with it? Put these on your bullet points. One, there was no power to tax. Only states could impose taxes. And as I said, the states often didn't even pay them. That's a real problem. You might, if you don't want to write what's in parentheses, that's fine. At any moment, go ahead and pause the PowerPoint and go ahead and write down if you're not keeping up with me. All right, second thing. You don't have to write this, but Congress could request money, and it could, and thus no nation would lend U.S. money because they didn't know if the states would pay. All right, so they're like, well, we don't know if you're actually going to have any money. So thus America's money was pretty much worthless because no one would actually, use it. So that's a real problem. This is actually a picture of an original American dollar, what it looked like. All right, no power to enforce laws or treaties on the states. So although they could make a law with 9 out of 13, and they could create treaties, the problem was there was no executive branch. Or the executive branch, let's put it this way, was pathetic. There was no like formal executive branch. It was a rotating group of 13 individuals, one from each state, and they would each be a president for 1 year. But it wasn't a formal executive branch like we have now that was separate and independent from Congress. And it was a group of people, and the group of people had to vote in order to have anything done. And so it was pathetic. They couldn't enforce law, and so therefore it was mostly useless. Another power they didn't have was they couldn't regulate commerce between the states, and that led to states starting to pass tariffs on each other. It led to disputes over the rights of rivers and navigation, and really just caused all kinds of issues in terms of getting business done. And so this was another major issue that will be addressed in the Constitution. And what you're going to notice is that these issues that are problems are going to be addressed in the Constitution and fixed in the Constitution. No power to raise a national army. It said the states must keep militias, and the national government could control whether they go to war and had to defend the country. But the problem is that it still was, again, a request at the states. You're requesting the states for national army. This would become a major issue during Shays' Rebellion, when a massive rebellion in Massachusetts is going to happen, and Massachusetts requests help the national government, and everyone's like, oh, I'm not sending anybody. You going to send anybody? No, I'm not sending anybody. So no one helps them, and so that's a problem. So no power to raise a national army. There was no national judiciary. We already talked about how Congress was the court. I say this in quotes, court of last resort. And so the disputes between states nearly lead to war in some cases. There was no executive branch. We already mentioned that. There was therefore very little ability to enforce law. And so the Articles of Confederation Congress only had a legislative branch. And so therefore that's going to be fixed in the U.S. Constitution when it's written in 1787. And then each state had one vote. I addressed this in the last video. That meant that states, it was very difficult to get things done. It was a supermajority, and so that made it extremely difficult. 9 out of 13 to pass a law. That was the number, 9 out of 13. By the way, that will also be the same number that it is going to take to require the Constitution to be adopted when it's written. right? And doesn't matter about population. And that's, those big states like Virginia, New York felt this was incredibly unfair. That'll be fixed in the Constitution as well. And then lastly, I love this one, is that if you wanted to change the articles of the Confederation because you thought they stunk, you needed 13 out of 13 to amend it. Now, when the Constitution is written, you might say, well, wait a second. So, like, all the states had to agree to the Constitution in order for it to happen. And you might say yes. But the way the people at the Constitutional Convention looked at it is like, we're not going to amend the articles. We're actually rewriting them entirely and starting over from new. We're starting over from scratch. Like, the articles were bad. So, we're going to start over again. Rhode Island tried to, like, stop the process by not showing up. Good old Rogue Island. And they thought they could stop it, but the other states were like, "No, we're not. We're not actually amending the articles. We're actually just like getting rid of them entirely." So sorry, and so that didn't work very well. Okay, that's that. This is the list you need to practice. Again, flip it over, say them in your head, see if you can come up with all of them, and then also use a whiteboard and write them out, erase it, write them out, erase it, then do the practices that I also have as well. All right, thanks.